spying on all of this. And Andrew, I gave you a shout out. You didn't even acknowledge my shout out. I mean, you are Mr. Cloud.
Yeah, you're treating me too nicely, Gary, but I appreciate it. I was listening to the panel obviously the entire time, and I think it was incredible. Everyone just kind of their insights on it, because where else do we get everybody from everyone that touches an actual AV job all in one place to talk about what's new, different, and needs to be done in this industry? I thought it was fantastic.
Look, I want to also say congratulations to Andrew, because he is not getting in the analog world a lot of cloud, because he has a new baby. So therefore we know he's not getting much sleep, and yet he's here on this session. Congratulations to you to being a brand new dad and all that comes with that, the work as well.
Yes, thanks, Gary. But I make time for this, that's for sure. Always for you.
All right, good. Well, look, you're going to do a demo for us, and I'm going to kind of hang out and watch this and ask you questions and help ask the questions that other people are asking of you as you go through this. And then after Scott, we're going to go through those case studies one by one. So stay tuned with us. Scott, I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, so
Gary, sorry, Andrew, I'm turning it over to you. I just said Scott. Why did I say Scott?
If Scott wants to jump back on, he's always welcome. But thank you, Gary. And even before we do a discussion of like the how and everything, I did want to actually summarize a little bit about what we talked about today, because I was listening in, I took some notes, and I think it was incredible. Again, what an amazing opportunity to hear from all four members that touch an AV job, but also visionaries of where this industry is going. And Scott, you mentioned that UC has brought about this dynamic need of constantly understanding what's happening in the space, right? So that constant heartbeat. Eric, you talked about standards. I think standards is the key here. I'm actually going to talk about that in a second as well. Pam, from a manufacturer standpoint, about bringing value and actually making your metal smart. I love that. I am going to use that, even if it is going to throw you under the bus a little bit. But and then Ron, I think you made one of the greatest analogies here, because I'm going to return to it in a second as it relates to a dashboard. And we all think of this dashboard when we think of cars, right? And what you said there was really interesting, because if you think about your own car dashboard, how annoying would it be if I had to go to the mechanic every time to check my oil, to go to the tire shop every time to check the pressure on my tire, and go to the electrician every time I wanted to check if my radio was working? I may go do that, but give me a dashboard to understand it before I go. And I think this is a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about for 15 minutes today, which is the trends that we are seeing in the industry. And I got to really boil this down into three main trends. But before we do that, what I want to do is, we heard from the experts, but just this summer, actually just a few months ago at InfoComm, Xyte and Ray, we walked around the show floor in Vegas asking just that same question. What is this industry looking for in the cloud? So before I summarize my trends and a little bit about the panel that you just saw, I do want to share some snippets of us canvassing the show. So here's a quick pulse of the industry.
For AV devices, I feel it's very important so that we can maintain them and do maintenance right away to provide a good customer experience for the people in our rooms.
Efficiency. It's just that simple. Allows for the remote content to be observed in different locations.
It allows us to be proactive and making sure that we have uptime as much as possible.
Cloud monitoring is important to the AV industry due to the centricity of having all of your devices in one central place.
Remote management is great because you'll be able to respond to your clients a lot faster. Instead of them waiting for 4 hours for you to get to site, you can respond to them within 10 minutes.
You need to understand what's actually online and offline for support purposes. It's a way to get feedback from the devices. Plus, you need to update them, see what firmware they're running, for example, get inventory.
For remote support and quick response times. So it gives installers the ability to manage many sites and remote sites without sending engineers out. They can keep tabs on the equipment and the status and health.
Convenient and instant access.
The ability to keep tabs on your system
whether or not you're actually in the presence of said device. So if you have audio streams, AES-7, Natty, Dante, anything like that, you can actually kind of keep tabs in them as they're going through your system.
Easier access and information. I'd say to keep customers happy because you can answer their problems immediately.
I think for sure it's definitely the future. You know, it's where things are headed. It makes sense because I think everything in general, cloud solution wise, is going in that, as I said, direction.
So clearly, this was, maybe it sounds a little redundant, but there's clearly a trend, right? I mean, there's this pain about access to the cloud. There's a need to be able to get understanding of what's happening in your spaces, but also an opportunity for integrators and manufacturers alike to kind of bring this more value aside their hardware. Yeah, people want to gather data. They want to remotely support devices. They want to deliver better customer experiences. And best of all, it involves everybody, right? As you heard from Pam, Eric, Scott, and Ron. And all are clearly in agreement that this AV cloud is needed. But I want to get into the details now of the how, why, and where. So in preparation for this event and obviously listening to this panel, I personally actually went out and spoke to hundreds and the team, if not thousands, of industry experts, current customers, some of the panelists, obviously. And I asked them this same question. And I want to boil it down to three main trends that I found in this research. And the first trend is the clear cloud for all. And I'm kicking off of this one because it may be the most obvious, yet it's actually the hardest to execute. You know, everyone says, of course, I want a cloud for issue detection and management and monitoring, better efficiency. But the AV space, this industry is an integrated one. It's a complex integrated value chain. So a cloud for one, meaning like a manufacturer cloud, a specific dealer cloud, an independent IoT cloud is just that, really. It's just one cloud. However, what we really need to benefit this industry, and I heard this from the panelists, is it's a cloud that threads between all members of this value chain, something that actually brings clear value to each step in the process, visibility to each participant, and ideally collaboration through the cloud. But this collaboration means multi-brands, multi-manufacturers, multi-dealers and integrators, multi-consultants and end users, full cloud interoperability, a true single pane of glass for remote monitoring and management. So finally, we can move from devices now to rooms. The second big trend, and I didn't hear this a lot on the panel, but this came up a lot in our research, was a clear and renewed focus for green initiatives and sustainability. And I know you may not think about it at first and how the AV cloud can support this, but it does so very well. You know, the immediate answer is, okay, I can, cut down on my flying or driving or train times between buildings and job sites to support devices when you can do more remotely and in the cloud. While that's great for system integrators and users, I actually think for manufacturers, and I know Pam, you kind of touched on this a little bit actually, this is a huge sustainability metric that you can unlock with the cloud. And I've spoken this many times actually with you, Gary, and I know you've done sessions on this for years, and of course everyone immediately goes to AV as a service, right? But it's not the way you think. I'm not talking about rooms in a box, because we've seen that kind of never really get off the ground, right, Gary?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's something that everyone's talked about for a long time, and it was one way to sort of dumb down systems so that you could be in control of everything because you knew exactly what was in there and what was likely to go wrong. And then you'd have this database of FAQs, but also a database of problems fixes. But the truth of the matter is things like the pandemic destroyed that because, delivery issues, right? We had to switch brands because we couldn't get products, and constant upgrades, little small things, where all of a sudden control was done a different way, or the way the product operated was completely different. Stupid stuff like having, a brand have a discrete on and off, and all of a sudden the next generation, it's a toggle on and off. So you didn't know if the product was on or off. And you didn't even understand why that change actually happened. Those things did have a big impact.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that AV as a service isn't a great path forward, right? It's gonna be here sooner or later. So one is set yourself up for it when it is gonna get here, and obviously a standards-based cloud is gonna help you do that. But I want to take a quick second and talk about what can we do today, right? I know even when I talking to Ron about this, who was on the panel, he was like, look, these are great big picture items, but like I got problems today to solve, man. You can tell me what's happening in 5 years down the road, be that visionary, but I need stuff to happen to me and my spaces and my meetings better now. And I think one of the great ways, specifically around sustainability, is reduce the need for replacing or trashing hardware unnecessarily. And by doing that, and Pam kind of alluded to this, is focusing on a software-defined experience for your hardware. That can mean licensing, entitlements, feature enablements, premium upgrades. All of this can be done through software. This industry already has the best hardware in any industry that I've seen. So let's now redefine it and enhance it through software. Make the hardware that you're selling the worst it'll ever be on day one when it's installed into your job site. And I want to compare this to another industry. I know Pam saying she comes from security, and we mentioned the auto industry a little bit on this dashboard idea, because Tesla has done this perfectly. And when we talk about dashboarding and in legacy hardware space, the automobile industry comes up immediately. They took a legacy industry and turned it on its head through a software-defined experience. What they did is less turnover, higher customer retention, and now some of the greatest sustainability metrics, and I'm not talking about because they're battery-powered cars, but because their cars are on the streets longer and being supported and improving because of that software-defined experience. Some quick numbers for you. I found this fascinating. Outside of Tesla, the highest customer retention rate in the auto industry is Toyota. It's a 50% customer retention rate. Tesla's is 90. That is a software-defined experience that's going to keep your customers, and help you bring sustainability metrics along the way. Gary, you're muted. I know you want to say something.
Sorry about that. I didn't mute myself, but all of a sudden I was muted. But that's what software is like. But I want to mention that because, look, this Tesla thing is incredible. I hate the way those cars look. And from the outside of the car, but in the inside of the car, it is amazing. But the truth of the matter is you sit on the inside of the car. And I will have to say one thing that I think if you have never looked at it, if you've never really seriously looked at a Tesla, the software upgradability and control of that car is stunning to me. I was in Vegas a few weeks ago and I rode a Tesla where the driver said, "Are you okay if I use the auto pilot feature?" And I was like, "I've heard about it, but I don't know if it works or not." He drove me to where I was going to go completely without having his hands on the steering wheel. And I can see why the adoption rate, or they have a 90+%, because you see a feature like that and you fall in love with it and you wonder why every other car manufacturer doesn't have that functionality, and yet they're able to upgrade and continue to improve it over time. And we can't figure that out with a PTZ camera. It is weird that they can do that on that level, but we can't figure out how to keep a PTZ camera upgraded well enough that it will track a presenter. So there's some irony in that, I think.
I mean, Gary, don't worry. I don't think anyone looks at an AV over IP HDMI switcher and says that's a beautiful hardware, but it gives you an amazing experience when done right. And I think software can help with that.
It can. Yeah, but keep going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run into your conversation.
But because honestly, this conversation, it brings me into our third and final trend that I wanted to summarize here. I mean, it's the, I don't want to say the obvious one, but it's also kind of the hush-hush one. But it matters. And okay, Andrew, it's great. How does this all make me money, right? I mean, we're all in business here. We all have to run a business here. And if I'm going to adopt something and I'm going to move towards something, I need to see the returns. So as we discussed, customer retention, incredible opportunity there for generating increased revenue. But what else? Well, in fact, a lot of those sustainability activities, they also increase your revenue, generate new revenue streams, or ideally, especially for end users, reduce costs. And so since we have a diverse audience, I know listening into this, I do want to break it down for each. And obviously for manufacturers, completely new revenue streams are now opened up through aftermarket sales and licenses and upgrades. All of these are contributing to customer retention. For system integrators, like what Eric was talking about, this is finally now a way to materialize your service contracts. You can make them tangible. Previously they were a contract I just signed, and then hopefully it meant my stuff was working and kept up to date. Now, through a single cloud standard, you have a way to visualize it and materialize it to your customers. And especially for end users, while you may not be making money off of a cloud standard, you absolutely are going to be saving costs. All of this from like a less need to travel for site visits and replacements, but reducing downtime and increasing efficiency is where this cloud for all really comes into play here. So where does this bring us? I want to get back to that challenge, which is this multiple screen. Sorry, Gary, you want to say something here?
Yeah, I want to reiterate that. I think that you jumped over a point that needs to be reiterated. One of the problems with a remote management contract is that it is completely an intangible. And if nothing's happened, there's an assumption that everything is fine, even though it may have actually been fixed behind the scenes. So and we have some amazing salespeople in our industry. And if I put this in front of them, they can sell it. But if I put this in front of them, a lot of them have a hard time selling it, because if it's not tangible, and that's why they leave it off. They tend to leave it off, or they tend to add remote management after the fact, maybe even after the customer's gone over budget. So in the case where they've actually purchased it, in the case of a cloud management platform, you do have a tangible piece that disappears if they don't purchase it. And so therefore they have this sort of FOMO thing going. And I'm constantly writing about the updates that you're doing to your cloud management platform, Andrew. And I will just put this out there. I'll challenge all the other manufacturers, because I've written about all of them. Scott, you know this too. I've written about all of these cloud management platforms. And the only time I've written about them is when they introduce them. They almost never tell us about any updates, because they almost never have any updates. And that's a big problem with the manufacturers. They're in the business of making projectors. They're not in the business of making a cloud management platform. So therefore, they don't have a good cloud management platform. And I'm not going to call it any brands, but I think we all know that's what ends up happening with the brands that aren't investing in this, or they're just doing it for their own management system and not for the industry as a whole. So I think that needs to be restated there, because you do have the ability to take something away. So I think in Ron's case, he sees something more tangible when it is a pane of glass sitting there that is layered on top of everything else that it is controlling.
Yeah, I love that analogy, and I'll even bring up the instant gratification, right? I'm happy to sign these service contracts with my integrators, but what do I get from it tomorrow, or today for that matter, after signing? Now we have that answer, right? And we can do that through a platform that materializes and tangibleizes that contract. And so we've seen a bunch of manufacturers begin to build their own, and I love it, right? This is the generation, the foundation of everything that we've been talking about to even allow us to have this conversation today. From every individual soundbar manufacturer to control system manufacturer to mic and speakers, building that cloud foundation has been the only reason that we can even get on here today and say, all right, great. We're at a state now where we've gotten to the cloud somewhat. We need more. Everyone's got to jump on board, but we've got the train rolling. But now we need to draw a thread between them all. It's the only answer to bring this to the market properly. And where this brings us is that I've taken this research and I started to think, how do we turn it into action? And if you think about our industry, and Eric was talking about it, we are an industry of standards. And it's for good reason. An integrated market, a complex integrated market, needs standards to ensure interoperability, easier specifications, guaranteed operations, all of that. And so from Dante to HD-Base-T to SDVOE and tons more, all of them have contributed to better outcomes for manufacturers, integrators, consultants, and users. And I really am proud to say that we ideally here at Xyte are leading that next frontier into the adoption of an AV cloud standard. Finally, a unified platform for all, with value generation and collaboration across everybody within the chain. It's something that supports green initiatives, from AV as a service to software-defined experiences, of all around the amazing hardware in this industry and customers are currently installing in their spaces.
Well, I think this should not be overstated. You're also not in the car cloud business, and you're also not in all sorts of other industries. You are squarely looking at the AV industry and how that you can help our industry specifically, which is what I got excited about, because I had seen other versions of this come from big companies like Honeywell, as an example, where they do building management. Oh, by the way, we can manage AV stuff, but they don't have they don't have the people to keep up with all the. I mean, like, I could ask Pam right now. I bet they have 10,000 SKUs. I bet they have something like 10,000. I'm gonna guess something like 10,000 SKUs, because they've got, I don't know, 8-10 companies. Each one of those companies with anywhere from 200 to 500 to maybe even 1,000 pieces. And I think that our industry is ripe for something like this. I want to bring Scott on, if we can bring Scott on, because Scott is still in the background watching, and he was the president of Avixa. And I want to know, having served in that role, I want to know what his perspective is on, how do we get Avixa involved in this? How do we get them? Because, I get the association has to be an independent voice here, but
right.
There are no other options.
Right.
No one else has stepped up and said, we're going to do the cloud too. How do we make this bigger than just us?
For all the right reasons, the AV industry wasn't the first mover here, right? Because integrated systems are complicated, multi-vendor, all the things we talked about earlier. So the second mover advantage is to do it right the first time, not skin your knees and go through all the iterations. Because it's inherently an industry problem, not a manufacturer problem. That's why trade associations like Avixa exist. And I was on the board for 10 years. Gary was on the board. Definitely back in the day when green buildings became a thing, I raised my hand and said, let's do that. When smart buildings became a thing, we had a task force for that. So this is the kind of thing that trade associations are specifically built for, so that we can get to a common open platform, so that we don't have 17 clouds that, our clients, Ron and team, have to manage. So I would call on the industry to step up again, like you have for the last 50 years, and make this a priority, because it's becoming where our industry is going. It's a software-defined industry. And I've been driving Teslas for 11 years, and you should try Rivian, Gary. But we've got to become that level of industry.
You're the second person that has said that to me in the last 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to at least take a look at it. But their truck looks like my Tonka truck that I played when I was a kid. It's like a big
Part of the
square. I don't know. Enduring charm, maybe retro charm. Pam, How close was I? 10,000 SKUs. How close was I? Seriously.
You are underestimating significantly.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's even more.
I was sitting here going, tens of thousands. Yes.
Yeah. So the issue there, Pam, is the fact that, since Xyte comes from the AV industry, they have the people that are just going to keep up with the AV products and be able to add all those SKUs as you turn bent metal into controllable bent metal, for using your term. The truth of the matter is the time is now. And I think, I honestly, Pam, I think that you're going to be a driver in this, because you are at the helm of a big company, but also I think people in the industry are watching you, and I think you could help us with Avixa and bringing them along. Scott, don't you? I mean, I think Scott
Absolutely.
would agree with that. Pam, I think you have a great opportunity to take a leadership role here.
Well, thanks. No pressure, but
Yeah.
No pressure.
Well, and one interesting thing that's what was mentioned in the panel is, we don't have to jump in with 50,000 SKUs immediately in this fully functional environment. We're looking for off on, right? Like let's baby step into where we can eventually integrate to and increase value as we go, and define what that value is.